Hi, I'm Ellie Witter from the Miami University Alumni Association, and I am very pleased to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar, Inside the International Student Experience with the International Student and Scholar Services Office. I am joined today by Director of International Student and Scholar Services, Molly Heidemann, and International Student Coordinator Dan Sinitar to learn more about recent trends and statistics, challenges of our international students, highlights of the international student experience, and much more. There will be time at the end for questions, so feel free to submit questions with the link just below the screen. And now I will turn it over to Molly. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Great, thanks so much, Ellie. I'm happy to be here. This is my first time giving one of these presentations for alumni. Looking forward to it, and I hope to share some insight and information that will be interesting to all of you who are watching today. As Ellie said, my name is Molly Heidemann. I am the Director of International Student and Scholar Services here at Miami. I've been here since March of 2008, so just a little over 13 years in this position. So I'll start by just telling you a little bit about our office and our team. So we are currently a team of 6. You can see our staff here. We have an assistant director, Amy, who's been with us for a while, since 2012. We have 2 international student advisors, Alex and Allie, who primarily advise our international students on visa and immigration issues related to maintaining their legal status here in the US, which I'll talk a little bit about later in my presentation. They advise on plenty of other things that come up during those meetings related to academics or financial issues or just adjustment issues, but it is primarily visa advising. And then we have 2 program coordinators, Yuenan Jin Rodriguez and Dan Sinitar. Dan, was mentioned earlier, and he will be with us today to help answer questions at the end as needed. But they coordinate all of our programs, events, activities, other support, including the International Student Center, which I will also be talking about later, which is new to our building and to our services here in ISSS. So we are located in McMillan Hall, at least normally when we are here in the office, which I am today. McMillan is roughly across the street from the Armstrong Student Center. And if you ever have questions, want to email us about anything, international@miamioh.edu is our email address. And then you can actually find our website either through miamioh.edu/international or /ISSS. Both of those short links work. So that's our small but mighty team that we have to serve our relatively large population of international students, which I will be talking about as we go through the presentation today. So a little bit about what we do here in ISSS. Our mission is to lead the efforts on campus to orient, support, and retain our international students and scholars. Now, the word scholars, just briefly, that refers to visiting professors and researchers who come from abroad, hosted by an academic department here on campus. I'm not going to be focusing on our scholars today, but that is why they are in our title. I'm mostly going to be talking about our international students, which is certainly our primary group that we serve in ISSS. So we serve our students by, as I mentioned before, providing what we hope is thorough and effective immigration advising to help students maintain their legal status in the US because they are coming on a student visa, which I will talk a bit more about. We provide comprehensive and ongoing cultural, social, and academic support. And we also provide resources for other units across campus that interact with our population. We don't do any of this alone. We work with units all across campus who support and serve our students in one way or another, whether that be the Learning Center or the Writing Center or the Counseling Center or the Health Center. So we try to make sure they have the resources they need as well to be able to effectively serve and support our students. A couple points about what we don't do as you're thinking about maybe what questions to ask or what I'm going to talk about today. We do not handle the recruitment or admission of international students. That is actually handled by the admissions office, which is under Enrollment Management and Student Success. So I won't be able to speak much to questions related to the recruitment of our international students, since that is handled by another office. I might have some idea about some of it, but that's not our focus. And then we also are not the office that handles the English language training. There's a couple other units, one on the Oxford campus and one on the regional campuses, that actually offers the academic courses and support needed for the students whose English proficiency is a little bit lower than what is needed for full admission to Miami University. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what an international student is. You probably have an idea in your mind. I think a lot of us, maybe who are from the US, grew up in the US, have that image of the foreign exchange student that we went to, or that went to our high school, that we got to know maybe for a semester or a year. But most of our international students who are coming to Miami University and other universities in the US come as full degree seeking students, meaning they are not just coming for a semester as part of an exchange, although we do have some of those. The vast majority are coming to pursue a full degree. So an international student is a citizen of a foreign country who is studying in the US on a temporary visa, usually the F1 or J1 visa, which means that they are meant to only be here for the duration of their studies and a few other grace periods and benefit periods, but they are meant to then return to their home country after the conclusion of their studies and related work authorization. International students, when we're talking about them, does not include permanent residents of the US, which are also known as green card holders. They are considered domestic students, similar to US citizens. So we are talking about students who are here on a student visa. The international students that we have on campus, as I mentioned, are typically degree seeking, but they can fall into any number of categories of academic level or degree objective. We have international students who come as first-year students, first time at the college level, but occasionally they have actually gone to high school in the US, so they might not be new to the US. It has become much more common for Chinese students in particular to do some of their high school at a boarding school in the United States. Still not the majority, but a little more common certainly than it used to be. The majority of our first years are coming from abroad to the US for the first time. We also have transfer students who may or may not be brand new to the US. Sometimes they are actually transferring credit from a university in their home country. So they're new to the US, but not new to the college level experience. As mentioned previously, we have English language learners, so students who do not have the full English proficiency needed to be admitted to Miami University. So they start out by taking English classes for sometimes just a semester, depending on their level, or sometimes as much as a couple of years, in which case they would start out on the regional campuses through our English Language Center. We have those exchange students who come for 1 or 2 semesters as part of an exchange agreement that Miami has with a university abroad, where an international student comes in and a domestic student goes out to the same university. And we have graduate students who come to pursue master's or PhD programs here at Miami. So moving along, I wanted to talk for a few minutes about maybe why we have international students, or the importance of having international students, not just in Miami, but in the United States in general. And it's hard to look past the economic impact that that international students have on not just Miami, but on the state of Ohio and on the United States. So there's actually studies that are done every year to estimate the economic impact that international students have in the US. So our professional organization is called NAFSA, the Association of International Educators, and they have released data. The most recent is from the 2019-2020 academic year, which found that international students in the US contributed almost $40 billion to the US economy. Now, keep in mind, that's not just tuition, but that's the money that students pay for housing and food and transportation and entertainment and any sorts of miscellaneous items that one needs when they are living and studying. anywhere in the world. So not an insignificant amount of money. And if you break that down, it's over $1 billion to the Ohio economy. So that means international students studying in the state of Ohio. And they even break it down by congressional district. So if we look at Congressional District 8, which is where all three of Miami's campuses are located, it's almost $150 million that international students contributed to that district. And that's nearly all Miami University students. There's a couple of other small institutions in there, but it's worth talking about, I think, because these are students who are, like I said, they're shopping at our grocery stores, they're going to movies, they're buying cars, they're doing all those sorts of things that contribute to our economy and to jobs here in the U.S. In fact, if you look at that website, which I realize is kind of a long link, you can also see the number of jobs that are supported through the economic impact that these international students have. However, those of us who work in this field do it for a lot of other reasons related to what we see as the importance of having international students here on our campus. And that's more of the cultural impact. And there's a lot of articles and studies done on this as well, maybe not quite as much of hard data in some cases, but having international students on campus provides cultural perspectives that really enrich our learning environment as well as the local community. By having international students on campus from currently about 70 countries, sometimes it's more than 80 countries, we're hearing from students from all over the world, different cultures, different backgrounds, different religions, and that just naturally increases the curiosity that our students have, as well as the cultural competency, which is crucial when you think about the global workforce that we all live and work in. As a lot of people say these days, the world has gotten flatter. It's so much easier to work with and communicate with people from all over the world, and it can happen instantly. Perhaps there are people watching this right now who are outside the U.S. I don't know, but we live in a global world and a global workforce. So having international students here on campus also helps our domestic students prepare for their futures, working with people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different languages, which is vital for their success in their future careers. Having international students helps to contribute to scientific and technical research. Some of the best and brightest minds in the world who've gone on to create startups that become large corporations in the area of science and technology are people who started out as international students or immigrants to the U.S. So we want to bring those minds together and use them to innovate and create jobs and advancement. And kind of the really big picture is that it strengthens international diplomacy. What better way to begin planting those seeds of understanding between people of different cultures and countries than to do it when you're sitting in a classroom alongside others who share different perspectives and can learn from each other and teach each other. So I could probably talk about this for a while, but I hope that you also agree with the importance of having these students on our campuses. Having said that, looks like my colors switched a bit here. Sorry about that, but so I'll try to explain what these colors we're looking at, what they mean. But let's look at the enrollment. This is enrollment from fall of 2013 through fall of 2020. And what you're going to see, of course, is that we are currently in a downward trend in terms of international student enrollment at Miami. The top line, which at least on my screen appears as kind of a blue, dark blue, is our total enrollment each fall semester across campuses. The light blue line below that is Oxford only. Below that, we actually have Chinese students represented because Chinese students have made up the vast majority of our international students for quite a while now at Miami, really probably since I started here and we started bringing in a a lot of students from China. And then the bottom line is the number of new students. So the brand new students that we bring in each fall. And our new students actually topped out way back in 2015. We saw just a slight decrease of new students after that, and then a bigger decrease these past couple of years. But because we were still bringing in more students than we were graduating for a while, our total numbers kept going up until we topped out in 2018 at almost 3,200 international students at Miami University. Since then, of course, we've seen a decrease, a pretty significant decrease this past year. And I want to spend just a couple minutes talking about this slide because this is not just a Miami trend. This is a nationwide trend that universities across our country have seen a decrease in international students, excuse me, over the past couple of years. And there's a variety of reasons for that. I'll try to talk briefly about a few of them. As I mentioned, we do have a lot of Chinese students at Miami, and we have seen a decline in the number of Chinese students coming to the US. China has been building up their own higher education system and really promoting it. There's been some evidence that employers in China tend to prefer candidates who've actually been educated in China, probably due to cultural norms and cultural competencies within their country. And without spending too long talking about this, I mean, there was a large middle class in China that, due to the one-child policy that was in place for quite a while, had really saved up funds to be able to send their child to study abroad in what they saw as one of the great education systems in the world, which is here in the U.S. But that I think kind of reached its max, and then we've seen that declining just a little bit over the past couple of years. Added to that, some of the policies that were either proposed or implemented by the U.S. government over the past few years either made it more challenging for international students to get visas to study here, or simply made it less desirable. And I'm not going to go into detail about that right now because that's not what I want to focus on, but it did have an impact. It did cause that downward trend to begin or to increase a bit. And then, of course, COVID was the clincher that really caused that significant decrease over this past year or so. I think that goes without saying. I certainly hope that we see a rebound once we are through the worst of this and that much of the world has been vaccinated. So I'm going to go a little bit quicker through the rest of my graphs that I have here, and I realize it might be a bit hard to see these all these labels on your screen, but in terms of countries, the big chunk of the pie graph here is still China. So China still makes up about 3/4 of our international student population at Miami. That is actually followed by Vietnam, which has been on the increase pretty dramatically for the past couple of years. They're actually our number 2 population now, followed by India. And then after that, it kind of goes down. The countries I have listed here are those that have at least 10 students represented. So you can see several South Asian countries, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, a couple of African countries. We also have Korea in there and Canada. But if we break this down by undergrad and grad, you'll see a little bit more of a difference in terms of the countries. If you can go on to the next slide, Emily. So in terms of undergrad, that big chunk of the pie, once again, here is China, but you'll see it's more like 80%. Let me see, it's actually 83% of our undergrad international students are Chinese. And then that is again followed by Vietnam, India, Korea, and Canada. Now, if we look at graduate students, which is on the next slide, you're going to see that we have much more diversity among our international graduate students. So China is still that blue chunk, but it's only about 27% of our international graduate students. And then that is followed by India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal. So a big chunk from South Asia there. You'll see that Vietnam is not on the grad student pie chart because I believe all or nearly all of our Vietnamese students are undergrad. So we don't see a large portion of undergrads we don't see many grad students from Vietnam, whereas a lot of our Indian students and those other South Asian countries are grad students, as well as the African countries I mentioned before, Nigeria and Ghana are largely graduate students. And then, of course, there's a bunch of others that have smaller numbers of students represented. As I said earlier, I think we currently have 69 countries represented. Normally, we have over 80, but just because of that decrease over this past year, because of COVID, we're seeing a little bit smaller number of countries represented. Quickly, academic divisions. Again, this may be a bit hard to see, but our biggest academic division represented by international students is the College of Arts and Science. That is partly because that includes all of the undecided, undeclared students, as well as those studying in the English program that we have here on the Oxford campus. But that's followed by engineering and business, and then our smallest would be education and creative arts. We do have a fair number studying on the regional campuses and regional majors. And then the last bar there is those who are just studying in the English Language Center. Let's see, I just have a couple more graphs and then I'm going to move on into some challenges that our students face. I thought you might be interested to see the top majors of our undergrad international students. Number one is actually the Small Business Management program, which is housed on the regional campuses. I was a little bit surprised to see that is currently our number one major among our undergrad international students, followed very closely by computer science. And then we have finance, economics, psychology, and a few others that you can see there. And finally, I thought I added this in kind of at the last minute, but I thought, you know what, everybody's living through COVID right now. So let's talk just a little bit about how this has impacted our students in terms of where they are in the world this semester. So when we look at our students who are enrolled and where they are, more than half of our undergraduate international students are studying from outside the US this semester. Now, when you keep in mind that most of our students are Chinese, that means we have a large portion of Chinese students who are actually studying in China this semester, where they are currently 12 hours ahead of us. So exactly flipped on the clock, 12 hours ahead, working in kind of a third shift, if you will, with their classes happening in the middle of the night. Whereas with our graduate students, nearly all of them are here. In the US. We only have a very small handful of grad students who are outside the US. Most of them have stayed. And I think that's for a variety of reasons, but when they're pursuing research and in the lab and things like that, much harder to do when you're not physically present here. I'm happy to answer questions later about COVID and how it's impacted our students and our office. That's not really what I'm focusing on today, but I'm more than happy to answer questions at the end about that. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit now. Hopefully I've given you just a little bit of context of our numbers and our trends and why we have international students. Let's talk about the challenges that international students face when they are studying here in the US. And this is primarily looking at, I guess, during normal times when students are here physically and on campus. Anytime that if you've traveled abroad or even just traveled to another city or state that you've never been to, some of those initial needs are those very practical matters. If you're at all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food and transportation, how do I eat? What do I eat? Where do I eat? How do I get around? And of course, these are issues that international students have immediately upon arriving on campus for the first time. We try to help them during orientation, learn where they can eat, provide them with some meals, provide them with some transportation. But these are really kind of ongoing challenges that our students have. Food it probably goes without saying, very different around the world. American food does not fit everybody's palate very well. It's a bit perhaps salty and fatty compared to some other places in the world. So it can be a tough adjustment for some of our students to find food that they enjoy and that fits their tastes. And then transportation is a challenge in Oxford, I think, for anyone who doesn't have a car, which most of our students don't. So just, trying to figure out the bus system and figure out ways to get out of town when there isn't any public transportation. I mean, our students are coming from around the world, from large cities where there's extensive public transportation, trains and buses. And so it's quite a shock, I think, to end up here in this rural town where there is no public transportation. Just staying connected with family, again, due to those time differences and technology challenges. Our students often stay up late trying to do video chats with their family, which leads to other time management issues, to just, have to manage not only the normal challenges of studying and figuring all that out, but having a parent who's maybe 10 or 12 or 13 hours ahead makes that a much bigger challenge, I think. I also added in here just limited financial aid. One thing I haven't talked much yet about visa requirements. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. International students are required to show that they have sufficient funds for their studies, for their tuition, their fees, and their living expenses. And international students are typically not offered a large amount of scholarships. But things happen, natural disasters, economic crises, currency devaluation, things like that. And this is really tough because international students are not eligible for any kind of federal aid in the US. So no kind of loans or anything. So the options to get support when there is something, unexpected that happens is a challenge for our students. There's sometimes some small grants that are available, but it's not a lot. So it's important to keep in mind that they are not eligible for the federal financial aid that domestic students are. Moving along to integration, I mean, this is certainly one of the primary challenges that we see. Just being able to kind of get out of their bubble and build those meaningful relationships across cultures. It can be tough, I think, both for those who are maybe the only person from their country. I can imagine that feels quite isolating, to be the only student from a particular country, to have no one to speak your own language with. I would create a challenge, I think, for anyone. And on the flip side, with China, for example, we've had so many students from China that they have been able to kind of stay in their own bubble and talk to each other in Chinese and eat Chinese food. And I think we should all take a moment to think about whether or not we would do the same if we were studying abroad and had friends or classmates there from our own country who could speak our own language and eat our own food. That is quite the natural human thing to do, but it does make it tough for building friendships across cultures. And we certainly try to offer ways to help support these efforts. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. It's always an ongoing challenge that we are trying to find creative ways to meet and to support and help with. The other major one is language and communication. I'm sure that is obvious, but our students, when they're learning English before coming to the US, are largely learning it from textbooks and in a classroom, and largely to pass the tests that are required, the TOEFL or the IELTS, if you've heard of those. And they're not necessarily getting those daily hearing those daily speech patterns and idioms and jargon and slang and all the things that we use when we talk in regular daily life. So it's quite a shock, I think, to come and be suddenly immersed in another country where you are having to constantly listen and speak in your non-native language and try to pick up on the idioms and the different accents and people who maybe talk very quickly or things like that. Quite a challenge. And then the reading and writing. Imagine the extent of the reading and writing that is required in college level courses, and to do so in a second or third language. I mean, I just have so much respect for students who are able to do that. I honestly can't imagine. I've never learned a language well enough to be able to write an academic paper or read an academic textbook. So it does take more time and is tough for a lot of our students to keep up with that at the pace that is needed. And of course, there are misunderstandings due to just cultural differences. I mean, that can be the littlest things to do with greetings. A common one I hear is that Americans tend to do that, hey, how are you? And we don't really expect to get much of an answer beyond just, hey, I'm good. Whereas I think a lot of times international students are expecting to actually answer the question, to sort of start building those deeper conversations and relationships. And they sometimes find that Americans tend to keep a little bit more of the kind of shallow greetings, and find it tough to really build those meaningful friendships. And then moving on to some other very, I guess, academic related challenges, and I'll go through this pretty briefly. But education systems are just very different around the world. And in the US, we tend to require class attendance and participation. We have a lot of assignments, a lot of quizzes, a lot of group work. Like I said, participation is required. This can be very different than being in a country where you basically need to show up and take your exams. and that's what you're graded on, is maybe like a midterm and a final. There's not as much, of those quizzes, small quizzes and assignments. Attendance isn't required. And participation. I mean, questioning your teacher would be unthinkable in some other countries and cultures. So that's hard to adapt to in this new learning environment. Added on to that, things like the idea of a liberal education, having to take courses from a wide variety of areas and not just your core curriculum for your major. In a lot of countries, there's a very prescribed curriculum for a particular field, and that's not the case here. We pride ourselves on a liberal education, but that can be very different than what a student is used to. Parental involvement. Maybe some of you listening are parents, maybe even parents of current Miami students. There's really two things that I thought of here. One is that there tends to be a lot of parental pressure on our international students to study a particular major or field. So very much looking toward, what's going to get you a good job in the future. So it can be very, that collectivist mindset as opposed to letting the student just be independent. It's a family decision, and there can be a lot of pressure from the parents. On the flip side, because these parents are in another country, often don't speak English, perhaps didn't go to college themselves, they are not very involved in navigating the system and helping their students figure out how to choose courses or how to navigate the different offices or how to pay their bill or all of those things. The students are really doing it themselves, and in many cases having to explain it back to their parents in a different language. So lots of challenges here. And then finally, immigration, which is really like the crux of why we're here. And I realize using the word immigration can be confusing. When I say that, I don't mean immigrating to the US. What I really mean is just federal immigration and visa regulations that are put in place by our government for these students who are studying here. And just quickly, a few of those that our students have to worry about and have to be mindful of is that they always have to be enrolled full-time every fall and spring semester. They have to be taking their courses in person, aside from COVID world. There have been some exceptions made there, but in normal times, they have to be taking nearly all of their courses in person. They can only work part-time and on campus during the school year. They're not authorized to work off campus, and they're not authorized to work more than 20 hours a week. They have to be sure that they finish their degree in a kind of a set amount of time and make normal progress. Although they can request extensions, they're not automatically approved. And if they want to actually work in the US after completing their degree, that requires authorization from the US government for them to be able to do so. And I'm going to spend just a couple minutes talking about that in case you're interested how that works. I'm going to take a drink of water first. Excuse me. So for our students who do wish to work in the US after completing their degree, there are options. In fact, it's called optional practical training, OPT, but it's got some pretty specific requirements. It actually is authorized by the government, so students have to submit an application to USCIS with a hefty fee. It's over I don't remember now because my advisors handle this, but it's over $400. And it has to be adjudicated by the government. Assuming it's approved, it's issued for 12 months. And students who receive OPT can only work in jobs that are directly related to their major field of study. And they cannot accrue more than 90 days of unemployment. And by this, I don't mean unemployment benefits in the sense of money. I mean, they cannot be unemployed for more than 90 days or they would lose their legal status. So they have to find a job. It has to be in their directly related to their major field of study in order for them to be able to stay and continue working. Now, for those who do get OPT and find a job and work, perhaps you're wondering what comes next. Well, those who are in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math, are actually eligible for a 2-year extension of their OPT for a total of 3 years of OPT. Otherwise, or when that's finished, the next most common step would be for an employer to choose to sponsor that person for an H-1B work visa. And these are some terms maybe you've heard in the news. There is, some talk about the number of H-1B visas available and things like that. There is a limit to the number of those visas that are available, and a lottery system is used because there are not enough visas available for those who want one. There are some other visa types that work in some cases, but H-1B is the most common. And then the next step beyond H-1B, if the person wants to stay and if the employer wants them to stay, would be to file for permanent residency in the US if possible. I'm not going to talk more about permanent residency right now. So moving along, I'm going to spend the last portion of this presentation before Q&A talking about what our office does to support these students. Because I talked a lot about challenges, so how do we support them? Well, we start trying to support our students basically from the point that they are admitted and confirmed. So before they even arrive in the US, we are sending out information via an email newsletter that goes out over the summer, usually weekly, with information, helping them to prepare. We just recently created a Canvas course. So it's like an orientation course in Canvas that our students complete so that they can go through modules where they learn information to help better prepare them for studying at Miami. And we try to offer some virtual like info sessions or webinars for them as well. This is actually in lieu of being able to go physically to their country. So, and really by that I mean China, because that's where most of our students have come from in the past. From 2014 to 2019, a team of staff traveled to China every summer to actually conduct in-person pre-orientation sessions for these students. I was grateful to have the opportunity to go all but one of those years. And so I think that was wonderful for our students and for the staff, but has not been possible last year and this year, and we're not sure in the future if we will get back to that or not. So that's pre-arrival. Now, what about when they actually arrive? Arriving on campus is a bit different for international students than it is for domestic. You can go ahead and switch the slide, Emily. Although I don't know if you all noticed all those suitcases that the students had on that previous slide, but we're not talking about parents driving up to campus with a U-Haul or a car loaded full of stuff. We're talking about students who are flying across the world carrying two large suitcases usually and a carry-on. So we do provide airport pickup. Not all of our students choose to use it, but we do offer it, where we take them from the CVG airport to Oxford on a school bus with all their luggage packed on a moving truck, is what we usually do to get all their stuff up here, help them get moved into their residence halls. As I mentioned before, just help them make sure they know where they can eat and where they need to go and where their room is and things like that. Helping them with some practical matters like giving time to set up bank accounts and cell phone service and all these things that they don't have and that they need when they arrive here in the US. There's also some required tasks like making sure that we check their visa documents to make sure everything got stamped correctly when they went through immigration, making sure they get their tuberculosis test, which is required for all new international students in the state of Ohio, and I think in most states in the US. So some of those medical checks. We offer a lot of information sessions and resource fairs to make sure they are aware of resources across campus, how to be a student, what are the rules for safety and academic integrity, and how do they stay safe and healthy, and all of those sorts of things. We offer peer support. I mean, the picture that you see here is actually one of our IPOLs, which is our international peer orientation leaders, leading a group of new students around campus, probably on a campus tour or something. We use both international and domestic students to serve as IPOLs to help lead orientation and to help lead those small groups of new students. And of course, social activities. So welcome breakfast, welcome dinner, sometimes ice skating or bowling or just those different social events to try to help students get to know each other and to have some fun. A couple more slides here, and then we'll be opening it up to Q&A. So we also offer programming related to what we call global friendship. So we have Global Buddies, which pairs new international students with domestic students simply for friendship and cultural exchange. So it's often a one-on-one match or sometimes a small group where they can just meet up with each other. We do offer some large group events where they can all get together and maybe go to the Butterfield Farms or things like that to get to know each other and build up those cross-cultural friendships that we very much want our students to be able to make and that they are often seeking and find challenging to create on their own. Global Neighbors similarly matches international students with community members. So local Oxford community members. Sometimes they're actually staff or faculty who live in the Oxford area. Other times it's just, community members who perhaps retired or not, but who are interested in getting to know an international student and maybe taking them out to dinner, or taking them to a museum or celebrating a holiday with them. Speaking of holidays, one of our largest events that we offer through this idea of global friendship is our big Thanksgiving dinner, which unfortunately we could not hold this past year in 2020, but are hoping perhaps in 2021. So usually we have about 300 people attend. It's a mix of international students and staff, faculty, and community members where we come together in usually Shriver or Armstrong and have a big Thanksgiving dinner together where we just celebrate that warm American tradition of giving thanks and sharing a meal together and just, breaking down boundaries between students and the Oxford community. Let's see. Finally, my last slide regarding what we do as ISSS. Well, we do a lot of other stuff. We offer a variety of workshops and webinars to our students. Recently, mostly virtual, but I think moving forward, it'll be a combination of both in-person and virtual on a variety of topics like work authorization, searching for a job. We've recently done some alumni career panels. We have workshops on driving in the US because that is sometimes an issue for our students who have not driven here before, and a variety of other topics that we think are important. We try to offer bus trips to get out of Oxford because transportation is so hard for our students. So we take them shopping, we take them to sporting events like taken them to Indiana Pacers games. We've done Reds games. We've tried, I think, football and soccer with varying levels of success. But we've also done local attractions like the zoo, aquarium, things like that. And then there's just a variety of other programs that we offer for cultural sharing and global learning, like our tea tasting, which has become really our signature event this past year. We've done a badminton tournament, all sorts of different culinary events. We celebrate International Education Week every year in November with a variety of activities and programs and all sorts of other things. And finally, we try to support the various international student organizations on campus. So there are a variety of country or culture specific organizations that we really try to support, give them space to meet, sometimes offer them funding or co-sponsorship so that we can help to support their activities, often centered on various holidays, global or cultural holidays around the world. So that's just some of what we do. As I mentioned early on, we have a new International Student Center here in McMillan Hall, which we're really excited about. It's on the ground floor. It's a nice space where we will be able to hold programs, receptions, maybe student org meetings, things like that. We were hoping to really launch it this past academic year because it is open, it's here. We're excited about it, but of course we haven't been able to do much in person this academic year. So hopefully this fall, we will be doing a true grand opening of our International Student Center and start being able to host in-person, meetings and activities. And so moving on to the slide of ways to get involved, I do want to mention, kind of skipping to the second point here, we are actually going to have a Move in Miami campaign this August for the International Student Center. There's a variety of supplies that we would still like to get for the center to make it more warm and welcoming, and where students can hang out, study or have some coffee or things like that, but also to have programs there. So if you're interested in supporting that cause, watch for that when the Move in Miami campaigns start up later this summer. I also had mentioned Global Friendship. If you're local to the Oxford area and are interested in getting involved, maybe being a global neighbor, coming to our Thanksgiving dinner, send us an email or watch for information that our office puts out about how you can sign up and get involved in that way. We'd love to have more people who are interested in those efforts and who want to become friends with our international students. And my last point is just very broad. One thing I like to say is that, every interaction that an international student has with an American, whether it's that moment they first get off the airplane, whether it's when they go into a store, into a bank, when they're making a purchase, when they're maybe just out and about, enjoying themselves at a park or anywhere, that is showing them who we are. What do we value? And earlier I talked a little bit about international diplomacy. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be a good ambassador for the U.S., to show these students that we value them, that we are good hosts, that we welcome our visitors, and that we are interested in both learning from and teaching for that mutual cultural learning that is that's vital to our global world, our flattening world. So I think that brings me to the end. Yes, only a couple minutes over where I wanted to be. So we've still got about 10 minutes, and I don't know if questions have been coming in, but I believe I'm turning it over to Ellie now to let me know if there are questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Molly. We do have a couple questions that have come in. Does your office help with international students finding jobs or internships once they graduate?
So not exactly. I would say that would be more so the Career Center. So we have the Center for Career Exploration and Success on campus that has really been, I think, ramped up a lot in the past several years. And they actually have a team dedicated to supporting international students and other diverse populations on campus. So they're really the unit that helps students, whether they're international or domestic, search for those internship opportunities and jobs, both during their studies if they're looking for an internship or after their studies. And we partner very closely with them.
That's awesome. And kind of going with that, obviously I was a part of one of these, so I know, but we were able to do some international career panels with alumni who are now either in the United States or back in their home countries. And how has it been to reconnect with our international alumni?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I mean, as Dan can probably attest to, I've been very eager to get going on these alumni outreach efforts for our international alumni, because having been working here for 13 years, I've gotten to know a lot of students who are now alumni and have kept in touch with some of them, better than others through social media and things like that. But I know there's thousands of them out there, and I've been super eager to just try to reconnect and also utilize them to help support our students through offering their own words of wisdom, sharing their own stories about how they found a job after they graduated and that sort of thing, whether it's in the US or abroad. And I've been really happy with it so far. And we're hoping to do a lot more of that in, this coming year and beyond.
That's wonderful. And actually, we just got a question from, I'm believing it's an alum who was an international student and is now living in New York, and is wondering, how can they get involved? How can they help the ISSS office?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to let Dan answer that one because we have him here as well, and I need a drink.
Yeah. So, I mean, any alums listening, international alumni, we did recently launch kind of a new sign up form, which can be found on our page, and hopefully you have received an email about it. I think we tried to get the message out. So step one, just sign up for that form so that we have a way to get in touch with you. And then just kind of we will follow up with kind of different ways to get involved. But as Molly said before, not just to international alum, but to all alum, if you're kind of looking for ways to get involved or have some questions or ideas, our website, always a good place, but also just our email address, right? international@miamioh.edu. Really kind of is just right there. It is popped up on the screen, right? Just send us an email there and we will connect you with the right information and how to get involved.
And just to add on, if you go to our website, if you were trying to find that page, I believe it's under resource. So if you go to our website there, and then I believe it's resources, and then you'll see the alumni page from there. And that's where you can find the form to sign up to be on our list so that we can contact you for things like alumni career panels.
Yes, absolutely. And we have a question that came in that, would you be interested in volunteers to be paired up with students who are not studying in the US to meet periodically by FaceTime? Or volunteer, I'm assuming this is a community member wanting to see how they can be a part of, especially the students who are not here right now.
I appreciate the question. I think that at this point, since we are so close to the end of spring semester and are, as President Crawford has said, are moving toward an in-person fall semester, we're really hoping to get most of our students back here in person because that's the direction Miami is heading, and there's not going to be a lot of online options in the fall. So I guess what I would say is send us an email and we'll see if we can utilize you in some way to connect with our students. We are certainly trying to think about how can we take what we've learned during these COVID times, things like ways to connect virtually using Zoom and other platforms to do virtual webinars. So another option might be, can we have community members who aren't even in Oxford who connect with our students through things like Zoom or FaceTime or other platforms who can't be here in person, but who can still support our students in other ways. So all about these new ideas of ways to support our students in various ways.
Wonderful. And then one other one, is there anything specific to the Miami experience that you help the international students acclimate to from the time that they're accepted to when they come? I'm thinking maybe broom ball or hockey or some of those other fun things that are very Miami.
I can't say that we've done much with broom ball. Now I'm feeling like we should. Because that's one that we haven't done much with. Dan, does anything pop in your mind immediately?
So the one thing that comes to mind that I someone relatively new to Miami, but I've heard from other international students, especially like sometimes before they even get here when they're in the airport, just the idea of love and honor, that like if you're wearing like Miami gear, that someone, you know, a stranger, when they meet you, kind of might just be like, oh, you know, love and honor Miami. So just kind of that, I think just general kind of community that comes from Miami that extends, you know, of course, while you're a Miami student, but right, even before you get here or after you leave. So I know I've heard that just from a couple students, just that nice thing where just kind of representing Miami out in the US, in the area. If you see another Miami person, just that kind of instant connection and kind of fellowship that you have from that.
And I mean, on maybe a different kind of scale, we in our newsletters and things like that, we try to have a little blurb about different traditions. So we try to since they can't visit campus typically, you know, most of these students are not in the U.S. until they step foot on campus a week before classes start. So we try to prepare them by telling them about the seal, you know, not stepping on the seal, and I don't know, just some of the other traditions with the sundial or Peabody Hall being haunted, and you know, things like that, so that they're familiar with some of those things. And we try to invite Swoop to our welcome dinner. He's usually able to come, and students love that, getting their photo taken with Swoop and stuff like that.
That's wonderful. I believe that is all the time that we have for this afternoon. I just want to thank you both for joining us, as well as on behalf of the Alumni Association. Thank you all for our viewers for being with us, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks.